Hello, my name is Nancy White, and I used to be a Girl Guide.
Over the years, in guiding, there have been a great many changes. The Scouts have gone up and gone down, but basically, guiding itself remains just exactly the same. And I think the girls join for the same reason, that they have fun, they enjoy themselves, and it gives them experience which ordinary living in school doesn't.
Shall we adventure together, riding a bus or paddling our canoe? Shall we go guiding together, singing at campfire, watching it burn, trying to do the daily good turn, tying a bandage, planting a tree, graciously serving the tea? Who, me? Shall we knit blankets? Shall we play basketball? Shall we start learning together? Shall we be sisters? Shall we be friends to all? Shall we go guiding together? Growing and changing with every passing year, shall we adventure together? Still helping others, still spreading joy and cheer. Shall we go guiding together? Shall we go guiding together?
The appeal of modern guiding is universal. In over 90 countries, more than 7 million girls of all ages are united by a common ideal and shared purpose. This spirit of sisterhood cuts across all boundaries, nationality, color, and creed, no matter whether members are rich or poor, from city or country. Guiding has no political intent. The philosophy is simple and enduring. A guide is to develop her personality and talents to the fullest and use her abilities to understand and help other people.
This is Malcolmson Park in St. Catharines, Ontario. This park is named after the founder of the first officially registered Girl Guide company in Canada, Mrs. Mary Malcolmson. Although the story of guiding in Canada begins officially in 1910, our story really starts in England in 1908, when Robert Baden-Powell, who was then a Major General in the English Army, published his Scouting for Boys.
His book was based on ideas he had developed with the British Army in India and South Africa. Scouting for Boys borrowed liberally from Kipling and the animal world. It appealed to every young person seeking independence, new adventure, and purpose. It was an immediate hit. Spontaneously, scout troops sprang up across England. It seems Baden-Powell had discovered an enormous gap in the lives of the boys. Whether the children were tired of being seen but not heard, or whether the social outlets for their enthusiasm were too restrictive, the colonel had struck a responsive chord.
But scouting was only for boys, and naturally the girls felt left out. But times were changing. The decade after the turn of the century was a period of growing awareness for women. Mass industrialization had freed her from her traditional roles. The first murmurings of the suffragettes were being heard in England, and the younger girls seemed to be swept along by the mood of the times. They had a voice, and they made their feelings known en masse at the Crystal Palace rally in London in 1909.
Colonel Baden-Powell had ordered a rally of the Boy Scouts in order to assess for the first time their numbers. 11,000 boys gathered to march past the chief. The girls were not invited. Undaunted by the disapproval of their parents, or the bad weather, or the possible hostility of the boys, they gate-crashed and fell into step. Some of them wearing highly original uniforms, complete with calf-length skirts and wide-brimmed hats turned up at the side.
We are the uninvited guests. Won't you let us in? For we share your ideals and aspirations. We are very much like you. We're your friends and kin, and we humbly demand some alterations. For the women of the world should have adventures too. We are here and we defy you to ignore us. We are young and we are strong. We believe that we belong. The scouting movement will be much the better for us. The scouting movement will be much the better for us.
Baden-Powell recognized the need to set up a girls' movement along the lines of the Scouts, but more suited to womanly activities. He assigned his sister, Agnes Baden-Powell, the task of rewriting the handbook.
With this letter, I am returning to you the manuscript of your Book of Advice to Boy Scouts. As you requested, I have suggested a number of alterations, which I believe may make it a more appropriate volume for young ladies. Please inform me of your opinions in this matter. Fondly, your sister, Agnes.
Although Agnes was instrumental in the initial days of guiding, when her brother married, his wife Olive naturally assumed the task of organizing the girls. Back in Canada, in 1909, Mary Malcolmson gathered a small group of girls together at the Welland House Ballroom to tell them about the Great Crystal Palace Rally. The girls were intrigued by her story and decided to start a guide company of their own. Mrs. Malcolmson launched this company on the basis of a few pamphlets of information and some suggestions for badge awards. The response was enthusiastic, and within a year, they were registered officially in England. During the next decade, companies sprang up across Canada, first in Toronto and throughout Ontario. Then Moose Jaw and Winnipeg had their own groups. By 1912, Victoria and Vancouver had followed suit, and Alberta and the eastern provinces joined several years later. In Canada and throughout the world, the history of guiding is primarily the story of individual girls working alone or within their companies to fulfill the goals of the movement, to become self-reliant and useful citizens.
Well, guiding crossed the country basically by word of mouth, and of course correspondence. And these companies and packs sprang up all over the place. You just couldn't even count them.
The girls embarked on a program of self-education. They learned to cook, to sew, to survive in the woods, and to administer first aid. And whenever the opportunity arose, they were more than willing to show their newfound knowledge to the general public.
Ever been lost in the woods or caught in a sudden downpour? If you were with this group of girls, you'd have nothing to fear. These guides are demonstrating their tenting skills and showing off their ability to survive in the outdoors. Their leaders look on, giving top marks for taut guy ropes and smooth ground sheets. What's this? A trap for prowlers? Or perhaps it's a portable kennel to keep the rain off Fido, the patrol mascot.
From the beginning, the outdoors and the camping experience were central to guiding, and in 1911, the Toronto Guides ran the first camp near the Credit River for 1 week. Anxious mothers, skeptical that tenting was a safe activity for girls, were frequent visitors at the camp, checking to see that their daughters were all right.
Camping in those days was a pretty rugged experience. You didn't have any of the facilities that you have today. As a matter of fact, I have a book here that gives us some idea of what happened at that first camp in 1911. Camping at a place near Lake Ontario. Mother and sister brought 10 pounds roast of beef and 4 apple pies to our camp, as we had been eating nothing but mulligan stews. And then someone donated a case of shredded wheat, and we got awfully tired of same. You know, you had to go for everything.
You saved all your honey pails and you used them to get the milk every morning and every evening. You made a deal with some farmer's wife, and you got all your vegetables, your bread even. It was more like wilderness camping, but then even wilderness camping today isn't anything compared to what we did in those days.
When I was about 12 or 13, I went to a camp out at Oakville, I think it was. And it was quite a large camp, and it was situated on a cliff. And I can remember very clearly at night, they used to put little strings around our wrists and tie them to the tent poles. I guess that was in case we'd get up and walk in our sleep or something and fall over the cliff.
The individual Girl Guides worked diligently within their own local groups. But it soon became apparent that a need existed for a council, a kind of a steering force to act in national projects. It was here, in Toronto's famous Casa Loma, that Lady Pellet, the wife of the Canadian financier Sir Henry Pellet, secured the support of several women's organizations and, in 1912, created a Dominion Council of the Girl Guides.
Sir Henry and Lady Pellet were very civic-minded people. In fact, they were generous to a fault with their resources, their home, their entertainment. And actually, Lord and Lady Baden-Powell stayed with them whenever they were in Toronto. Any cause, any need was something in which they took an interest.
The need for national direction was becoming more important because the Western world was becoming embroiled in the First World War.
Canada had to direct all of its energies towards the war effort, and the Guide promise of loyalty and service demanded the participation of the membership.
Guides did what they could and what had to be done. And in particular, when you realize that communications just were not what they are today, the ability of a guide to take a message for a long distance was invaluable to many people and in many areas. For instance, I'll suggest to you that if you wanted a doctor, how were you going to get a doctor if you didn't have a telephone? So a guide, you get your guide friend to do the running to get the message across. Now, on the larger scale, Canada contributed to the recreation huts that were in France. And they were of a fantastic amount of assistance in helping the troops as they came off the battlefield, and in addition, many of the French families in the immediate vicinity as well.
It was a time of self-sacrifice and hardship. The world had been badly shattered. Countries and friends had been torn apart.
The guiding movement was gaining momentum. Even in the dirty 30s, when the Depression threw millions of people into desperate poverty and the dry winds of the prairies covered the foodlands with layers of dust, new guide companies prospered.
During the Depression, one of the few interests for small children in the country towns was guiding. They hadn't the movies or the other entertainments that children nowadays seem to have everywhere. They were very poor, many of them, but they always seemed to manage somehow to get guide uniform by hook or by crook, and they had great fun in their guiding. And a great deal of it was done through the children themselves wanting to be guides and roping in a grown-up to come and be their leader. One place I particularly remember because it was a fascinating place to me. It was during the worst part of the dust storm era, and there was a tremendous lot of dust, and the whole community had been moved, I think by the government, up into the bush in northern Saskatchewan from the dusty prairies, and they were starting a whole new community there, and the children there wanted to be guides and got the young clergyman's wife to be their captain. She had never done any guiding, had no idea about it, but they had one book, and that book was Scouting for Boys. And they used that, and from that, they did the best guiding I think I've ever seen anywhere.
Well, guiding proved itself in the 30s. After all, it was a pretty rough time. A guider was feeling a great deal of responsibility for her guides and their families. But then you see that spread out into the districts in which they lived and to the friends of the guides. They wanted to be included on the field trips when wild edibles were picked up. They wanted to know all the little make-do things that they could do with nothing. For instance, shoes. If you had a hole in the bottom of your shoe, you put cardboard in it. Or maybe you had an old belt and put the part of the belt in the bottom of it. And then those shoes lasted you a little bit longer. The curtains sometimes. You made them into a coat or a dress. It was fabulous, the way that you learned to do with nothing. And as a guide, you showed these people how to do it. It was your interest in them.
In the late 30s, la Fédération de Guides Catholiques de la Province de Québec, later known as Guides Catholiques du Canada, Secteur Français, became an integral part of this national organization.
She wore a funny hat. I always loved my granny, though I never dressed like that. But I'm a girl guide too. I'm a girl guide too. In my dress of blue. In my dress of blue. The things that changed since Granny's day. We've come a long, long way. Camping, she did it in a skirt. Me, I wear my jeans when I'm digging in the dirt. But I'm a girl guide too. I'm a girl guide too. The same as you know who, same as you know who. But things have changed since Granny's day. We've come a long, long way. We've come a long, come a long, come a long, long way. Granny was a girl guide. She never told a lie. I don't operate like Granny, but I think I'm gonna try, 'cause I'm a girl guide too. I'm a girl guide too. I'm loyal, kind, and true. Loyal, kind, and true. And things have changed since Granny's day. We've come a long, long way. Things have changed since Granny's day. We've come a long, long way. Things have changed since Granny's day. We've come a long, long way.
My mother, who became the guide commissioner of Toronto, saw the need of a girl guide camp. So she decided that she would try and raise the money for the girl guide camp. And then she had people give her money, but then we had to have the guides take part in raising some of the money for the camp. And one of the first things we had when we had bought the camp was a barn, and the barn needed to be shingled. So we had a slogan that we would shingle the barn with donuts. And we sold enough donuts to shingle the barn. Well, in the next year, I think we had to buy a horse. And so they decided they'd sell some cookies. And that was the beginning of our cookie day, which has blossomed into something very, very big.
In 1939, 4,000 girl guides from over 20 countries gathered together in Hungary. Ironically, within only a few weeks of this demonstration of international comradeship, Hitler invaded Poland and the Second World War began.
By this time, guiding was quite prepared and willing to undertake whatever was requested of them. And they did this in almost any field that you could think of. The leaders, of course, took first aid and survival courses, and they made themselves available. And this was the name of the game.
And here on the home front, it's Girl Guide Gift Week. Guides from across the empire have been collecting their pennies to pay for 2 specially constructed air ambulances. On Saturday, July the 27th, at an airfield in southern England, the Princess Royal presented these 2 planes to the RAF. Air Marshal Gossage, who received the princess, said after the ceremony, These girls are a great asset to our war effort. Well done, guides.
At the end of the war, Canada, like the rest of the Western world, entered a new age, an age of unprecedented prosperity and technology, an age of new opportunities and challenges.
Although the world had changed in many ways, the aims and the underlying spirit of the guiding movement remained the same. In the 50s, as in the 20s, guiding continued to be a relevant pursuit.
This year, 1957, Girl Guides in all countries are celebrating the 100th anniversary of the birth of Lord Baden-Powell, the man who founded Boy Scouting and Girl Guiding. As part of our celebration, we of the Canadian Council of the Girl Guides welcome to a world camp 1,500 Girl Guides and Girl Scouts from 37 other countries. Guides of different races, religions, and cultures. All are coming together in one camp in Canada.
But it offered girls a great deal that probably school and ordinary life didn't offer, such as outdoor activities, camping. They go overseas to camps. They camp interprovincially in Canada and have a great many opportunities that nothing else offers, I think.
The aim of many Girl Guides is to go to an international camp and experience firsthand the sisterhood of guiding. When they return, they are eager to share their experiences with others.
One such girl writes, "Thank you so much for making Camp 77 a dream come true for all of us. It was a simply wonderful camp and I loved every minute of it. There was so much to do and to see, I wish it had been 2 weeks longer, so I could have done it all." When we arrived in the Edmonton airport, I asked one girl if she was ready to go back, and she said, "Yes, let's go." Yours in guiding, Ivy Sinclair, Alberta. Girls like Ivy, who attend an international camp or travel to one of the world centers, learn for themselves what international cooperation and understanding really mean.
Throughout its history, guiding has meant involvement, a commitment to family, to community, to country, to the world. In essence, guiding provides an ideal, a pattern for living.
Do you know the guide law, and have you considered what it means?
I know the guide law, and I believe that I understand its meaning.
Are you ready to make the guide promise?
Yes.
Will you promise on your honor to do your best?
These girls are being enrolled as full-fledged guides. In preparation for this day, each girl studied thoroughly the guide promise and law. This ceremony is each girl's public commitment to live up to the high ideals set before her.
I promise on my honor to do my best to do
As
my
these
duty.
girls progress through the guiding program, as brownies, guides, rangers, cadets, and guiders, they will look back on this promise and see new meaning and relevance in it.
And to try to do good turns wherever you are. You are now one of the Sisterhood of Guides.
It's rather hard to know why guides join in the first place. Mainly, I think, the glamour of the idea of belonging to something which takes place a great deal out of doors, the camping and the hiking and the canoeing and all those things that they think are fun to do. But I think that perhaps by the time they've been in guiding for a while, they've begun to realize that they're getting more out of it than just fun. And really, guiding is one of the few things for young people that trains them to always think of other people before themselves and to learn things that will help other people. And it seems to me that that is one of the great assets which guiding has.
We can go to the moon. We can bank with a plastic car. Play electric bassoon. Use a robot to mow the backyard. In these days it seems we can do so very much, but we still can't replace the human touch. Hands will always reach out to you when
Advance yourself in body, mind, and spirit, striving against all ills in order to help make the world a better and happier place. I trust you will be successful.
These words were part of Lady Baden-Powell's last message to Girl Guides around the world. Happiness comes when you use your abilities to help other people. That is something guides learn very quickly.
We're not changing just for change's sake. When we feel that there's a need to change, when we feel that what we say and do is no longer particularly relevant to girls, to women today, we look at ourselves very carefully and we say, hey, how can we change to make ourselves a more relevant, viable, vital organization? And we do.
Guiding is paying more attention to the adults involved in guiding. It's not just for Brownies, Guides, and Rangers anymore. They are thinking of what the adult can get from it.
The Guide program is always undergoing a change, and the reason for this is to bring it in line with the girls' lives. It's changed since the 50s, the 60s, and now the 70s.
Generally, we see the schools as providing skills to help girls make a living, whereas Guides is concerned with skills for living.
And this is an ongoing thing. It never stops. As soon as something is established, they're looking ahead to what the next group is going to need, and the program changes completely. It's not stereotyped anymore.
I think it's that whole ability to change and be vital and stay relevant that is the key.